Right, well, we need to read them early in the receipts, I guess. I'll give them a minute to grab a copy. Okay, I am going to gavel in and call the August board meeting to order. I want to welcome all of you who are here in person. I appreciate all of you being here this morning. And also those of you who are joining us on Zoom. I see Ellen, hope you're elevating and resting that knee. And I think Bessie may be joining us later. I also want to acknowledge Lori, who's joining us from San Diego this morning, where she's attending and presenting a second convening of Vision 2030. If you recall, she was in DC during our May meeting for an invitation only gathering with the Department of Labor kicking off Vision 2030. So good morning, Lori. I think it's awfully early for you in San Diego this morning.
Yes, ma'am.
So we appreciate
5:30. Thank you so much. And it is going well. Vision 2030 is quite an initiative by the Department of Labor. Happy to be included. And we're presenting Connect You to Jobs, which all of you heard Jalen, the young man that addressed us at the last board meeting, is a graduate of that program. So I'll be talking about reentry strategies, and that's not typical for us, but that program has really made an impression nationally. So thank you for allowing me to be here. Carter said he had no problem, and I think it's a good thing to keep us in that national picture. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here so early this morning. So, all right, I think we start off with the declaration of conflict of interest. So, do we have any declarations of conflict of interest this morning?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, Justin, Stephanie, Linda, Rebecca, and I think we've got everybody reported on. Yes. All right, thank you. I believe we have one person on our list for public comment this morning. So Tara Nunn with Echoes. If you could join us very quickly. Thank you.
I'm a partner in crime this morning. Good morning. First, my name is Tara Nunn with Echoes, and to my left is Francisco Garcia, who oversees our young adult program. And I would like for him to share some great updates about our summer Earn and Learn program.
Good morning. So every year we do summer Earn and Learn, which is a 5 to 10-week program for young adults that have disabilities. So this year, past couple of years after COVID was a struggle, but this year actually we did really well. We had 185 total young adults that went through our program. We have 2 different cohorts. We have 2 5-week cohorts that start in August. No, actually it started in July. And we had 153 young adults that started in July, and 115 that was for the first cohort and 15 for the second cohort, which is usually about the right amount. We had 17 that did not complete for whether they were on vacation, they ended up not wanting to do it. Our biggest partner in this was CBS. CBS every year usually takes about 100 of our young adults every year to all their stores all around Dallas. So I do want to recognize them, and also a couple of other jobs at sites that were Taco Cabana is another one that took about 40 of our kids this year. So overall, it was a really successful year. We exceeded our expectations of 156 young adults in the program. We hit 185 total. So that is the seal update. It's every year it's different, but this year was actually really strong. It was a real strong, and I appreciate everybody's support, Becky's support from the board, and also the VR counselors that were really supportive throughout the whole process.
Thank you. Right. I believe we have anybody else for a couple of comments. So for those of you who do not know me, I am Vice Chair Reverend Sophie. In my work life, I am Dallas Executive and Vice President for AECOM. We're in Dallas, and we are a global infrastructure company focused on delivering a better world for our clients and our communities. So I'd like to thank everyone also who joined us for the grand opening at our great International District Workforce Center. For those of you who got here a little bit early, we had a wonderful slideshow showing all of the pictures from that great event. We had our county judge, like Jenkins, who gave some wonderful remarks, as well as council members and some dignitaries from the Workforce Commission in Texas. And so it was really a wonderful event. And the center, it just was very welcoming. I think I saw several of you there, so appreciate everybody who was able to attend. And hopefully we'll get a chance to see some of those pictures come through later on during the meeting. So we have, as usual, a busy and important agenda today. So yes, Barry, I think you're our first with our finance report.
Okay, so we're joined today fresh from the red eye from Portland, Kevin Smith from Crow. And not to keep you in suspense, we're not going to have a bad news report here today. We're going to have a good news report today. As Dan and I vetted in the committee meeting before, we're proud to hear the results of the 2042 audit.
Thank you. It is a very positive report. Any indications that it wouldn't be is a result of the red eye. So if I don't make any sense, just please ask me to stop and repeat what I said. We meet with the finance committee both at the beginning of the audit as well as at the conclusion of the audit. And I say that to say I really believe that committee is performing their fiduciary responsibility in providing oversight for our external audit. Our audit is really focused in three key areas. We perform an audit of the financial statements as well as the federal and the state single audit for the current compliance. And each of those three, we have issued an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that we can provide. From a financial statement perspective, it means that your financial statements are prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and they were supported by the books and records of the organization. A couple of key points that I would make is one, we did not have any audit differences. We can still arrive at an unmodified opinion that had audit differences that were required to be booked and or waived under the auditing standards. However, we did not have it. And when I put myself in your shoes as board members, what that means is that the financial information that you receive on a monthly and a quarterly basis, ultimately at the conclusion of the fiscal year, is subjected to audit and withstood all scrutiny that we could perform. So it really means that the information that you receive on a periodic basis is quality. We also perform the two single audits, the federal and the state single audit. There we test both compliance as well as internal controls of compliance stipulated by the federal and state regulations. We did not note any exceptions as it relates to compliance in either aspect. So again, very quality audit, and nothing else required to be reported at this time that had to answer any questions. And you were dead. It was a great audit.
Any questions from anyone? So my colleague, I was speaking to my colleague Dan, but I think Dan and I did have an opportunity, along with Carter, on July 23 to really dig in and go page by page, and we are satisfied and happy to recommend that the board accept this report.
Do we want to make a motion now?
We might want
Or do
to.
we want to wait to cover all of the items together?
We might want to get, Kevin might want to go get some rest, and he's not involved in the other two, I think. So we have a motion?
Second.
I think all those in favor, please acknowledge, say aye. Anyone opposed? And then do we have any abstentions? That motion passes. Thank you so much for.
Good night.
Thank you for your hard work. All right.
Yeah, so we have two other items and I'm going to turn now to Ashley for her to walk us through the first one, which is ratification of insurance policies. And then the second one is a change in the employee benefits program.
Sure, thank you. Marsh and McLennan Agency is our broker for all of our insurance outside of employees' health insurance. And these coverages all run from July 1st through June 30th of each year. We had no changes in coverages for 2023, and you actually have a handout this morning with our schedule of insurance. Our annual premium remained very stable from prior year. We actually saw a slight overall decrease of 0.9%. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have on our insurance, or I can take it back to our broker.
So clarify for me again, I thought you said that this was everything but our health insurance.
Correct.
So in the H6.
In the minute. Okay, yes, I can explain.
Okay, thank you.
So during the finance committee meeting, I was just mentioning that last year in our October board meeting, I happened to have quotes for our health insurance, which begins January 1st. That was completely out of the norm. Usually I don't get that until later in October after our board meeting. So generally we come back and just ask for approval from the board for the president to move forward with the new insurance year. So we would do that for 2024 in our October board meeting, and then get that ratified by the board in 2024. Now, if we do have quotes in October, we'll make sure and bring those back at that time.
And then on property and casualty that you were really addressing, does that include the new international corporation?
This quote does not, but it has been added at the same rates. So yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? So once again, the committee does recommend,
Do you want to do the next one too?
sure, we do both.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and employee benefits.
So as a side note, before I start talking about employee, the 2% match, the agency does contribute 5% of employee salaries to the defined contribution plan for employees who have been with us for 1 year or more. The 2% match came about from some funds we received through a demutualization of Principal Mutual Holding Company converted to Principal Financial Group in 2001. Principal is our retirement plan administrator. The money that the agency received from that demutualization was required to be utilized for the limited purpose of providing employee benefits to current or future organization employees. And that is how the 2% match was born. In 2018, and you'll see another handout, Board of Directors resolutions from May 2018. So back in 2018, the board approved initially providing a one-time 10% contribution to employees on record at that time and a 2% match annually going forward until those funds were depleted. Now we're reaching that point. We have just over $20,000 remaining. And board staff proposed the continuation of the 2% match through our TWC grant funds, which is the same way we fund the 5% contribution going forward. That's a potential 7% employer contribution, and it's in line with what other boards are contributing across the state. I polled the other boards, and of those who responded, all are providing some type of matching contribution, but many are also providing a defined contribution in addition to the match. Total employer contributions across the state range from 5 to 10%. Additionally, I would note that participation from our employees since instituting the match in 2018 has increased. Pre-match, 84% of our employees were contributing to a 403B plan, and as of fiscal year end 2022, we had 94% contributing. So for that one, we would just like to request board approval to go ahead and continue funding that 2% match through grant funds.
Thank you, Ashley. So it was our considered opinion after hearing the presentation and going piece by piece, line by line. We recommend that the board ratify the renewal of the management coverage under the insurance policies and approve the funding of the 2% matching contribution to remain competitive in Texas. Do you have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Okay.
Do we have any discussion?
Just to clarify, real quick, Ashley, sorry.
Yeah.
It's, so this is all predicated on the employee making a contribution.
The 2% is, yes.
What about the 5%?
That is provided for employees that have been here 1 year or more. They do not have to contribute to receive the 5%.
But if they are willing to contribute 2%, they will get a match of 2%.
Yes, in addition to the 5%. Yes, you got it.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Say
Aye.
All opposed? And do I have any exceptions? Yes. We can go into the committee reports, if anyone would join them in the governance task force.
Thank you. So, we have minutes, we had our first meeting of the governance task force on this past Monday. And, we had great participation and I think a great conversation. We discussed the objectives, some of the guidance that Carter had given to me and discussed with other members of the committee. And one of the things that we discussed in going forward, and the objective of the task force is really to review our governance plan, our bylaws, and really discuss a way forward for the board, to bring to the board a recommendation in terms of the best practices and if there should be any modifications to our bylaws and our governance plan. And what some of the items that the board may want to consider taking on, such as nominations process, onboarding. And so we're really just at this point getting organized, figuring out tasks so that we can actually dig deeper into all of those items. And as I said, hopefully bring back to the board recommendations for all of these things. So it's great discussion, great participation, and really want to thank the members of the committee and also the staff who really helped get us organized and provide some background materials. So lots of fun.
And great leadership.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that, Joanne. It sounds like we're off to a really great start. Do we have any other task force reports? Dan, do you have anything you want to share on strategic planning?
Yeah, I do. We have not had a meeting yet. I've been able to coordinate the timing of all of our members. However, behind the scenes, we've been able to hold the old strategic plan that our group has put together, as well as those go back 15 years. As well as the strategic plans from Gulf Coast and the capital area, Austin area. And in addition, I've been able to come up with the name of the facilitator that we use at the Texas School Board Association. And we are going to be getting the names that Austin and Gulf Coast use. But remember the task of the strategic planning task force is not to write the strategic plan, but to come up with a process for writing the strategic plan, which will be done by the whole board, and to also choose recommend a facilitator for the strategic plan for the whole board to choose from. So if anybody has recommendations on facilitators that they have used to write strategic plans for organizations that they're a part of, please let me know.
Thanks so much, Lauren. Becca, I don't know if we've had a chance to reach out to you. Anything on the outreach? Understand?
Not just yet. Thank you for settling that. How to report next.
All right, great. Thanks so much. Thanks to those task force leaders and your work. So moving right along, I think we're moving to the consent agenda. So everybody's had their packets for about a week, and hopefully we'll have a chance to take a look at that. And just want to check and see if we're ready to some consent agenda, or if there's any items that we discuss. Right. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? So then we'll give everybody the next.
Got so early that I looked at it that day and I have completely forgotten I read. So.
All right. Give everybody a minute to click on look through. Right. Thank you, Michelle. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? And do we have any extensions? Something new, anybody else? Great. Okay, we get to move into our action items. And so, oh, no, we do need to vote. Thank you very much. I was ready to move right along.
Just a quick question, if you don't mind, and I really just might know the thing, but what constitutes why these would be in the consent agenda versus the conduct discussion that these normally invest at?
Is it in reference to the contract on page 14?
The difference between why we have things on a consent agenda versus items for discussion. Those are,
Just curious.
So some of the items speak specific to page 14 that's in the consent agenda. Those are items that have been brought to the board already, and it's for ratification. What we said we would bring back, it's already been presented in whole. So it has already been presented before you. Now it's still finalized and what has already been presented. So that's AEL, and there's the additional dollars for Equus that's already in its contract for this existing year that we're in. And also some, it was a result of a procurement from a while back for youth services, some additional training opportunities, and one for outreach was also mentioned in the for sector.
So again, just the differentiation between the consent agenda versus what we would discuss in the report is something that we have previously ratified, but we
Approved for us to move forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no.
it's interesting to be updated information. I'm saying. All right. Any further good question? Any further discussion?
Where
All right, let's vote on this. You know, Carter told me he's somebody knows, so don't screw it up. So All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? We have abstentions. Thank you. All that, okay, now, Dimitri, let's move on to the action items.
Okay,
So I think we're gonna talk about contract awards and items.
I am on page 15 and 16. Good morning. I'm Demetria Robinson, Executive Vice President, and I'm presenting the contract items on page 15 and 16. First, annually, we led contracts, new contracts to the board subrecipients, contractors and providers who manage and operate and provide services to throughout our workforce system. All contracts are contingent upon receipt of all grants funds coming from Texas Workforce Commission, including any carry forward or private funding. So the first item is youth, and this was a procurement that was done, but we had not negotiated costs. So in May, the board authorized staff to contract and obligate funding to Equus Workforce Solutions and Dallas College for Youth System Services, effective July 1 through June 30th. And that's aligned with our grant program year. We're bringing the initial contract budget amounts for both providers, Equus at $4.7 million and Dallas College at $900,000. As noted, the award was slightly less, but currently we're serving over 800 young adults are actively participating in the youth services compared to roughly about 600 that we had this past year. Both providers have continued to keep up the momentum to enroll, and the outreach and recruitment efforts are continuing. So we're expecting to see higher numbers this program year. So that's you. Any questions on you? I'll keep moving if not. For professional.
What exactly are the services that are provided?
So in the youth system, there are 14 elements. And so there's different services, job search, of course, training opportunities. We have entrepreneurship opportunities. You have adult education and literacy opportunities where we can upskill their credentials and get them a high school equivalency if we can. Mentoring services, tutoring, financial literacy. There are many support services that come along with it.
And these are all for.
This 16 to 24 is, we can do 14, but we stay away from 14. We try to do 16 and 24.
When you say serving 800, is that over a long period of time, or is that any person that has been a part of one program?
That is individuals that actually are enrolled in participating. So it could be over a period of time if they're in training. It could be 2 years. It can be short-term training. It can be as quick as helping them get it done. But they have qualified for the services and actually enrolled.
I want to kind of get a little bit of clarity, so if I'm understanding correctly, the services and the number of youth that they are serving increased over from last year.
Yes.
Okay,
Currently, right now.
currently right now, but the contracted budget that they had, in 2022, with 5 million went down to 4,700, is that, 4.7 million, is that because the that's what we approved?
Right, and it's the initial, and this is what we have obligated against the grants that we have right now. So we haven't realized any carry forward funding yet, because it's just been a year and 30.
That is, so I guess going forward.
There may be additional dollars coming back.
I think we reward people when they're increasing strong outcomes.
I agree.
I have a quick question. With the additional flexibilities that DOL, the changes that I'm sure, I know there's probably policy, I don't know if it's on the agenda for this month, but for next month. Do you anticipate increased enrollments with the DOL is talking about additional flexibilities with self-attestation for use and then the support services. So with that, you know, do you anticipate that the 4.7 will be enough for the?
I think we will have more, and I know Ashley, I don't want to get in, Ashley playing about money. As far as WIA grants, we have overlapping grants. And so because we're realizing where we are at June 30, we haven't accounted for and carry forward in these budgets right now.
Okay.
But I do anticipate.
Okay, good.
And
That's good to hear.
yeah.
I do have a quick question, just looking at the page 15, so the youth services we have. I guess program year FY23.
Yeah.
And then the other two have to do with fiscal year, so
That is the difference.
thank you. Want to clarify, I don't know if everybody understands that.
Yes, and I was gonna get to that as I go into professional services, we're switching to a fiscal year. So October 1 through September 30. So I'll make those. Yeah, keep it on. All right. So professional services includes QNet for technology management services. They provide all of our compliance with cybersecurity requirements and equipment refresh projects, as well as maintenance of all our computer systems throughout our workforce centers and the workforce office. We are increasing their budget by 6% as of right now because of all the security, cybersecurity requirements that have been enforced over the past year, and Alex can prove to that. We're increasing it to $475,000. At this time, we may anticipate additional costs as we move through these additions to enhance our service, our systems. So look forward to coming back to you if necessary on that one. We're in the third procurement year for QNet right now in the procurement cycle. Christine Wynn is who provides our fiscal compliance monitoring, and now will also provide program compliance monitoring after procurement that was conducted a few months ago. Juanita Forbes was previously our contractor for program compliance monitoring, but she has since retired. And we procured those services that Christine was awarded the program compliance monitoring. For her contracts for fiscal compliance monitoring is at $170,238, and program compliance monitoring is at $175,891. Both have some minimal changes. One was less, one was increased. The increase on program is because she is just coming on board and having to do multiple compliance reviews that we're catching up for the transition between Juanita and Christine. Any questions on professional services? Not, I keep moving. Childcare. We are estimating to have 24.5% increase for this year's allocation to childcare funding. We are proposing an increase in funding to childcare groups. Into that, their initial contract budget for the operations and management for childcare services in the amount of $118,367,491. 6% or so will be allocated, a little bit less than 6% will be allocated for operations. The remaining 94 to 95% will be for direct payments to childcare providers for the care of children. This is our fourth annual contract in the procurement cycle for childcare services. Our performance target has not been set by TWC just yet, but we're expecting a lower target due to higher costs of care moving forward since it's been mandated that all childcare providers go to Texas Rising Star program. And we will bring back funding amounts for specific populations, that is child protective services and also local match as we secure the match. We'll bring those amounts back to you for approval to add to the contract. Any questions for childcare?
Is any of this increase, going toward an increase in how many children are being cared for? That's why.
No, this is the direct care contract. This does not include quality. We'll bring quality back next month or in October, because that grant goes through October 31st.
So they'll be taking more children in, and is that the bulk of the increase, or no? Is it just the rising cost?
It's just the rising cost. If we are not slated to take more children in, we are probably maxed out right now. We'll have that presentation by Sherry a little bit later. We are close to 19,000. I don't think we're quite at 19, it's 18 something.
Yeah, about 18,000.
Yeah,
Unduplicated.
We're over target. Our target was about 60,000. So we're over extended right now.
Demetria. Hi, this is Susan. I'm on the screen up here. Hi, how are you? One question. So I know that we're saying the allocation, we're anticipating that the state will probably decrease the number of kids, the number in care requirement. Are we maxed out for the reimbursement rate that we can provide, or that we can give to providers, or do we have room to raise the reimbursement rates at all?
That's a good question. I know statewide, they're looking at another increase. Currently, I think we're maxed out currently for increasing rates because we have a lot of factors coming into play. Right now, the system, we're getting a new system, number one. And all providers are required to opt in Texas Rising Star, which would also increase the cost of care.
That would increase the rates because they're entering into the system. So it's not raising the rates across the board. It is raising the rate de facto because they are providing higher quality care.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions on childcare? Wait, the last one. One more. Okay, we have an annual initial contract budget for Equus Workforce Solutions, and this is for the workforce system operation. This contract includes multiple funding streams, plus private funding to offer innovative partnerships and program activities. There's a slight increase, same about 6%, and this is mainly due to additional Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act dislocated worker funds. And those funds are contributed to layoffs and downsizing of companies and helping individuals deal. We're proposing an initial contract budget with Equus in the amount of $16,265,383. This helps Equus operate the 8 workforce offices. Currently, we have recorded roughly about 17,000 duplicated customers coming in and out of our centers on a monthly basis. And about 4,200 individuals have received workforce services through our workforce centers. That means they have come in and either enrolled in some type of training or have utilized our system to work on resumes and do job search. Equus is also charged with serving our primary customers, the employers. And this year, between October and June, they've served about 7,200 employers. that have received some type of workforce assistance. That's whether putting jobs into Work Texas, with helping them get talented individuals for their opening positions. Now, Richard is the one that talked about all of the data, so I just kind of threw it in my presentation to help you understand the magnitude of what Equus does in our workforce centers in the big picture. So Richard can get into specifics about Target. But that's all that I have. If there are any questions, I can. I'm fine.
Okay, so if I'm looking at all the contract agreements, I'm back on this subject, because I guess I'm passionate about it. Like everybody from these areas got an initial contract that was increased, and so I would encourage the board to move forward. Because the organizations are performing, and I think we need to be serious for looking at how we can increase that contract with that amount going forward.
Thank you so much. And we can do that once we do, we closed out June 30 on those youth contracts. And so once we do close out, we'll know what carry forward is and we'll break them. Thank you. Any other questions?
Just a question. I have some follow-ups on the TANF funding, but would that be for here or would that be later for program systems reports?
I do have that later, so I can do. Okay, you want to wait to that? Okay, thank you.
All right, we did have a motion to move these items forward. And Bill, do we have any discussion? All right, so keep things moving forward. We're gonna ask all those in favor, indicate saying aye. Aye. The abstentions? All right, we know all those important. Thank you. All right, thank you. Risha and Connie are next with the WIA transfer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Richard. And the action today will turn to page 17 of the board packet. Federal rule allows us to be able to transfer between the different grant funds from dislocated workers to adults, and that's what we're asking for today. We have a large number of adult customers that are wanting training, so we're asking to move 500,000 from dislocated workers to adults. Our numbers we've already seen before for adults. And I'm not sure if you want me to go through all of the items or do you want to take each one?
I think if we can go through some of the summary,
Okay.
just in the interest of time.
Absolutely. The next item I'm covering is procurements. We procured computer hardware in the deadline for that was July 27th. We received 3 bids, coast to coast, Innovation, and Lawrence Consolidated Holdings. We had all 3 reviewed by independent reviewers, and the high scoring one was indicated below, which was coast to coast. Their total cost is $593.43 and it's so the recommendation is to go with the most cost effective bidder, coast to coast, and that's the computer refresh. Upcoming procurements, we have legal services, which is currently out right now. We issued that August 10th. We do plan on procuring for strategic planning and also childcare quality. Childcare quality, this will be additional quality aspects. If you move on to page 18. Every policy I've listed on page 18, there's no local flexibility. The first one starting with childcare. Childcare, as we indicated, TWC is moving to a new system from this. And this new system sort of incorporates a lot of our local policies where there's no local flexibility. And I have listed every policy that the state will begin assuming.
those rescinding dates will rescind local policy and adopt state policy. We presented this to the board last October. So this is kind of, I'm bringing it back up because the state has kind of modified some of the dates. So we have some policies that will be presented October 2022 and some October 1st, 2023. So this kind of removes, you know, the local consideration for some of these items. WIOA, this one is kind of modifying the youth matrix, and it aligns with the Department of Labor program elements. Ban of TikTok, we brought that before to the board. This is kind of expanding the designation of sensitive locations. They're not going to include resource rooms, people, public meeting spaces, board meetings, public areas, etc. Workfare assignments under SNAP. This is just a standard workfare agreement template. That's an agreement established with nonprofit entities or SNAP customers. And the very last policy, I know I'm going really fast on this, Texas Child Care Connection. This is incorporating some additional forms for providers and other sponsored inputs and flyers. So all of those items, there's no local flexibility, we're just adopting state rule and policy. So that's those items, and then external grants is page 19. We submitted several external grants with the Economic Development Administration. These grants were primarily supporting other applications. The U.S. Department of Labor and the U.S. Department of Justice partnering with the Texas Workforce Commission and other board areas throughout the state. Our request was $3 million, and this is just our 250th. And we supported a self-sufficiency grant. That the very last grant, and then I provided some updates on the other grants that we had out there. So that's everything I have so far.
Any questions?
I have a question on the WIOA grant transfer. How many additional are you training with the 500,000?
That's a good question. We've already seen a double in our numbers. I believe it's additional. Well, I would need to get back with you on that one. Sorry.
All right, do I have a motion to move these items forward? Second. Thank you, Penny. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please, say aye. Opposed? And, any extension? Right, thanks so much, Tony. Our data on the comments.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Richard Perez. I'm the Senior Research and Data Manager with the board. So in every board packet, we include the NPR, the monthly performance report, and this is like a report card from the Texas Workforce Commission. Now in the packet, we have the May NPR that's on page 20, but this Monday, we received the June NPR. And it has good news, so it is a handout, and we wanted to share that. So since last time, performance has improved for two measures: the dislocated worker measurable skills gain and the employer workforce assistance. So both of those measures are now meeting, and we're only missing one measure, which is claimant reemployment within 10 weeks. So we thought that was great news. We wanted to share that. It's a little too early to look at claimant reemployment, but we are implementing strategies to improve that measure. So hats off to Equip and the team for doing what they can to improve that. Now, before I leave performance, we do include also the at a glance, which has performance for the rest of the workforce boards. But I'd be happy to answer any questions related to performance before we go into the next. Okay, well, let's see. So the economic, yes.
I was wondering if you would comment on the red area of the Dallas.
Yeah, so that is the claimant reemployment. So that measure focuses on unemployment insurance claimants and how fast they can get back into the workplace. The state would like, to get back to work within 10 weeks. And the performance mostly comes from the Texas Attorney General new hire report, which I think looks at, the new entrance into workforce and maybe does a cross match for child support. So the trick to that one is as soon as somebody calls for employment, start reaching out, offering assistance. Hey, we're here. We can help you get back to work. And hopefully they'll be able to enter back into the workforce within 10 weeks. But it's just all revolved around strategies.
And it's labeled measurable skill gain.
Oh, I'm sorry. The measurable skills gain, that was when we were not meeting, but that is a measure that's related to credential attainment. And it's almost like not necessarily a halfway point, but progress that a student is attaining to get to their ultimate credential attainment. So a good example of that would be we train a lot of truck drivers, and ultimately they want to get their CDL credential. So maybe something we could report as measurable skills gain would be when they pass the written test. And then they still have to take the driving test with maybe a DPS trooper and pass that. But that is, if they pass the written, that is a skills gain that sort of leads to the next step in the credential attainment. So for those measures, we've documented and entered those into the system, and we're doing much better in that performance goal. We had some technical assistance with the state. They sort of helped us out, as well as all the other boards. I think it was a sticking point with some of them, but I think the state as a whole is doing a lot better. But that in a nutshell is that performance measure. It was broken out to adult, youth, and dislocated work. And dislocated work was the last one that we could do better on.
Okay, I think just as a matter of standard practice for the metrics that we're not meeting our goals, I just like to have some idea of why we're not meeting them and what we're doing going forward.
Okay. Yeah, and then
I mean, I don't want to overlook the fact that we are meeting or doing better on a lot of other indicators, but on this particular one, I'd like to know more about it.
Okay.
And what can the board do to help us meet these goals that are out there?
Yeah. So the only one is the claimant reemployment, and really the trick is assuming that somebody files for unemployment insurance, let them know about our services, and hopefully we can help them enter the workforce.
Richard, I'm sorry, this is Lori. If I could just offer a little something though about the 10-week measure, because we're having those conversations here. With me at the conference is Ed Cerna. I spent a lot of time with Ed, the director. Many of you met at our open house, and Nick Loplius, who is the regional administrator. And then Nick has a person here who is in charge of REC. And that is a program that's actually we're getting more funding for that, more scrutiny. The state has a plan they are trying to implement to correct deficiencies across the state. But what we've complained about is that the numbers are shrinking. Therefore, the funding to local boards is shrinking, and yet the people that we have to serve are the most needy. Think about someone who is truly still unemployed or depending on unemployment insurance at this time with a market as rich as we have. Across Texas, you can find a job that pays more than unemployment. So there's an assessment we have to do of every person that's in that number. There is a one-on-one meeting, which is very outrageous. I mean, to spend an hour one-on-one staffer to customer. I think we'll have the same conversation here that we might have about TANF, but they're going the other direction for us. Instead of giving us the money to provide that extensive attention, the money is beginning to dwindle and we're beginning to lose. We have maybe 12 staff on this, but lots of people who are falling in that measure. So it's not exactly a RISI measure, but in fact, it is part of the same, which is how quickly can you take someone off of unemployment so they stop depleting the funds. And I agree, it's something we have to do. We don't have anybody on the, who's available to work, who shouldn't be working, who's able to work. And so, Richard, I just add that it is a concern that the money is not coming through the system for the level of intensive attention that we have to pay to that unemployed population. Thank you.
And thank you, Lori. That's a perfect segue into the economic snapshot, which is on pages 24 and 25. And I do talk about RISI, which stands for the Reemployment Services and Eligibility Assessment. That will be a performance measure for us next year. And we've been doing the work for RISI for a few years. So we've gotten a little more comfortable with it. And I think we're doing good as a board, and I think we're well prepared for that new performance measure next year. And like Lori was saying, it targets claimants that are at risk of exhausting all of their unemployment benefits. So it targets them specifically for some services that can really help them get back into the workforce. But the first page of the snapshot, I wanted to take a look at all of the job seekers that were enrolled in Work in Texas and what their educational attainment and the age, the occupation they desire to have. Thought that was interesting. And gender. So I just laid that all on a page so we could have a better idea of who is in Work in Texas and how can they fit some of the openings we have. Also on that page, a little smaller this time, is the Texas labor participation rate, which is higher than it's been over the year for June, going back quite a few years. So I think that's a good sign for the economy. Unemployment rate is good at 4% even. The state is 4.2%. And still on this page, I did take a look at two snapshots of job postings in Work in Texas for May, June, and July, compared to May, June, and July of 2022. A little less job postings, but we've seen a little cooling off of the economy. We're starting to see a little bit of an uptick in warn notices and rapid response events in Dallas as well as across the state. So I think that's a reflection of that. On the next page, I did put some of our RISI performance from RESEA. The target should be approximately 80%. I don't think it's going to be set yet, but we're, I think, well situated to do well in that performance measure when we get there. Taking a look at yes.
So, wow, this is very impressive. The July 2023 employment rate number in Dallas County is the highest it's been since January 2000.
That's on the employed with the graph. Yes, so that is the level of employment for Dallas County, and it's the highest it's been in the series, which is excellent, great news for Dallas County. There's trends for that happening in other counties and in the state, but I wanted to point that out. That is excellent for the local economy, and I tried to highlight that. And then just the last thing on the page is just comparing occupations from 2001 to 2023, how they look, some declines in retail sales that's, expected, and just the evolution of office work, how maybe there's less administrative assistants and other support staff, but I think those have reemerged into more specific niche occupations within the office, what office workers are doing for outreach, for working with the web, and just outreaching customers and getting them in to provide services. So that wraps up my report for economic snapshot, and I'd be happy to answer any more questions if there's any.
I have a question.
Yes.
On page 19, the grants, it shows like 3 grants that Dallas College proposed for engineering, nursing, and electronics. I'm not sure what that is, but they were all, it says they were unfunded. Is there a reason why they were unfunded? So I think those are very high demand that have to feel. It's engineering and nursing.
I don't have a reason why they weren't funded. I think we just don't have specific information if they were funded yet. Is that?
No, they weren't allowed.
Oh, they were not funded. Okay. Yeah, I don't have that specific reason, but we do.
Richard?
Yes,
Yes, Lori. Christine, normally what happens is unless you ask for a debriefing, they don't give you the itemized reasons. Most of this is national competition. We were not the applicant, so we didn't receive the letter. But I don't even think Dallas College would know the specifics. And if you ask for a debriefing, it's usually, well, someone else did a better job of expressing the need in their community, or someone else had something very innovative to do. So I hate that we aren't funded. I agree with you. These are very important, but again, it's highly competitive, and the federal government has gone a bit too far, I think, in competitive. Everything now is up for grabs, and you have to have they have an amazing department at Dallas College for writing these proposals and high success rate in getting them funded. I'm sure they were disappointed too, but we still have a lot of hope for what's at the top of the list. SMU, UTA, Dallas College is a big proponent of both of those. They are part of the system. And so we're hoping that we do get some more money coming through this. I believe the technology hub designation is very critical, and I think that will happen. CHIP as well, but the competition at the national level is outrageous, and folks are spending a lot of money competing for money. And I think that's my concern. It's not a very efficient process, but the money will not stretch far enough. California has addressed it. They received 50 million in an application in the allocation process and said, do you understand what 50 million means to California? It's a nothing. Their numbers here are so significant, population and workforce, it doesn't do anything. And that's allocated as opposed to competitive. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say we at Dallas College, we compete often for these things, and Lori, I don't think with these, we know the details specifically. Did we get in? No, I didn't think so. But there are important areas that, we'll continue to get creative to figure out how to plug those gaps.
You guys don't miss many, I'll tell you that. You're very good at it, and we appreciate
Good
that.
team.
Any other questions from the gym?
and there's just one last thing I wanted to touch on, and that's the childcare dashboard on 26. That just lays out the childcare quality and the number of TRS providers. I know childcare group is doing what they can to get additional TRS providers. We can increase that, but we'll just keep track of it. We just wanted to
Thank you so much, Richard. I know that some board members have to leave, so I'm going to share the agenda around just a little bit. And we're gonna we'll come back to them, the update on leases and technology and quality assurance oversight. So, or, you know, just as we're that 8:45, if you would go ahead and give us an update on the 23rd legislative session. And then we'll try to get through the system report and then come back to the dispatch times, so that we not have to vote on any of those. They're just 30 next week. So.
Is that to me now? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, only two things that I want to cover briefly that have impact, one very positive, one potentially very negative from the session. The Texas sessions, plural, have been extremely busy, complex. Advocates are tired, lobbyists are even tired, and I know the elected officials are tired. The one thing that was very positive, and it did originate with great ideas, it's called the Lone Star Workforce of the Future. And it is a new project, SB 592 grants, very small grants. They can only be acquired through junior colleges, nonprofits, or public technical institutions, not private institutions. And the money is only $15,000 per activity, but it's intended, I think, to be seed money to begin a conversation of being more attentive to employer needs, particularly in upskilling. 15,000 a project is tiny, and the money is not very big. It's state, it's not a federal grant. And I just think it's something to watch. The one that is very concerning because it could have repercussions, unintended repercussions, and that is HB 1615. This is a bill that was passed with a few caveats in it about improving professional development in childcare. But the section 2 of the bill actually talks about the representation on local workforce boards. And it says that we must have a childcare workforce representative. That's wonderful. However, it occurred in a place that probably was unintended. The acknowledgement of that looks like it is not able to be blended with any other representation. Currently, Susan Hoff is childcare representative, and she is also United Way. So she's a nonprofit that represents the interests of childcare. The thought was, when the bill first came out, is that there were two bills, and I think we've seen them conflated, but we're trying to figure that out. The state has not issued the specifics yet on how we implement. But the bill could have been that a private sector representative could also be a childcare owner, which would mean we don't change anything. If there is a rigid adherence to what we read, and it is a new category that cannot be a duplication, it could mean, and I've done the analysis and willing to work through this, for the Dallas board, it may mean going from 25 to 29. The reason I say that is because we have to maintain 51% has to be an odd number of people on the board, 15% that is nonprofit and organized labor. It also, we have two elected officials that appoint employees, employers, and other members. So the 4 added would give each of our elected officials 2 new appointments. One could be childcare, or both could be childcare actually, but both would get private sector appointments as well. That balances, if you would, and that's my suggestion. We're hoping that we don't need to increase because this is the unintended consequence. Texas is a grandfathered state with the Department of Labor. It's not clear yet, but it could mean that this action could destabilize our grandfather clause with the federal, and that would be devastating. We've operated under grandfathering because we were first in the system to adopt what became WIOA. We were far ahead, 10, 12 years ahead of any conversation in WIA and WIOA. So there's advantage for Texas to stay in our grandfathered state because we get more flexibility with the feds. So as I say, it hopefully we will clarify and that it will simply be a childcare person who and Susan will stay. She's our nonprofit, it's part of the 15% if she's willing. I'm saying she's staying, no. The other would be that any new appointment of a for-profit industry would have to be a childcare person. So let's hope that they can work this out and get us some info. It's effective September 1. There's a conversation that there's a 180-day clock, which would put us in next spring. I'm watching it carefully, and it's something that, you know, we've built these boards from the bottom up. Many of us have been here from the beginning, and we know the intent, and we know that balance is critical. So if this acquires the balance, we hope we can hold on to that grandfathering. Those are my only two from the session. It was a very lengthy session, but I brought it down to what I found to be most, at least innovative and most critical to our existence.
Thanks so much, Lori. Appreciate you tracking those things and sharing, the two that are the most important. There was a lot of discussion at our June meeting about health, about childcare, and Ashley, I'm sure you guys have an update for us on that, so you share that with us now.
Absolutely, thank you. So it was requested at the last board meeting that we provide a financial model as it relates to direct childcare expenditures. And childcare group came up with this handout that you have today titled Funds Management Summary. We have from childcare group Sherry Anderson, Vice President Childcare Assistance, to discuss this forecast. But first, I just want to make mention, going back to the program year question that we had earlier in the contract section of the agenda, we have different program years for all of our grants, and the large childcare grant program year runs 13 months. And I talked to you guys about this in the past. Sometimes we'll have a 12-month grant with a hard cutoff, and it's kind of hard to spend right on the penny when you have a day that the grant ends, and the new grant doesn't begin until the next day. But we're lucky with childcare because it's a 13-month grant, runs from October 1st of one year through October 31st of the following year. So every October we have that carryover month to be able to work towards sending out the old grant and start working on the new grant. So I'll let Sherry take it away.
Great, thank you, Ashley. I just want to say that Carter also sent me an email and told me not to mess it up too. So I wanted to make sure that you guys knew that we worked really hard on this. A lot of pieces went into this analysis. We do this every year to see where we can, what the next year will look like as far as placing children. But if you'll look at the top left is just really at the top of it is the summary. And then the charts at the bottom and on the back is our actual tool that we use as we're forecasting out. So just to give you some highlights and trying not to get into the weeds too much. The first thing that we did is we wanted to see how we would finish at the end of this fiscal year. And so the top chart here is fiscal year 23, and that is scheduled to end in September. For childcare group, the actual contract doesn't end until the end of October between TWC and Workforce Solutions. So you'll see that we anticipate serving around 18,000 unduplicated kids, which what that means is that's any person that we have served, any child that we have served, even if they came into care one day. That's the actual number that we served as a community. If you look on the 2023 chart of the monthly average number of kids in care, that's the number of children on average that we served every single day that month. So you'll see for September, the unduplicated number is 18,000, but the average number of kids that we served was around 17,000. That's because we have attrition throughout that month. And so the 18,000 kids, we know not all of them will stay in care every single day of that month. And then if you look over here to where it says the unit rate, this is our average cost of childcare. This is what it costs us per child for services. And so you'll see that we started in October with an average rate of $26.51. And then you'll see that in September, we have increased that unit rate to be around $31. And the reason for that is because we are moving toward mandatory Texas Rising Star, which will be a higher cost of care. And so we anticipate by the end of September, we will have more Texas Rising Star programs in that program. So, and then if you look up at the top, the left-hand column, you'll see fiscal year 23 and just a summary of what our funds were. We started out with 9 million in carryover from the previous year. And then our childcare, our CCF dollars and our match dollars CCM, which gives us the available funds of 133 million basically. We're expected to spend 123 million. So that will leave us about 10 million left to carry over into October. And again, if you look down at the chart for fiscal year 23, and you look at the column that says actual monthly spend and then the projected monthly spend, you'll see that we are spending around $11 to $12 million a month on childcare. So that carryover money in September will be spent in October. So for fiscal year 23, we're looking at ending the year with an end of year of 15,828 children that we have served. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at it wrong. The end of the year in September would be 16,757 children that we have served. And that will put us over at about 105% of the target. So then we carry that into fiscal year. Let me ask, is there any questions on fiscal year 23? I know it's a lot. Okay. When we move into the fiscal year 2024, we start with where we left off in September. So we are assuming that we'll have about 17,580 unduplicated kids coming in. And then a lot of things are going to happen in October. We're going to be getting our new system and our new policies. One of the things that was voted on that Connie put forth was a new parent share of costs. It's going to be a statewide parent share of costs. Federally, the goal for our parents paying a portion of their care is to get them ready for them not having assistance anymore. But the problem has always been that they're paying too much of their income. So federally, they're wanting to move toward more family prosperity and the money going into their pockets and not so much paying out for childcare. So the parent share cost will be much lower. And so that will increase how much the state pays out for childcare. So that's going to impact the cost of care, as well as this is the last year for our childcare programs to not be a Texas Rising Star program. So we will see a huge influx of all of those programs, those 600 programs being into the Texas Rising Star program. Now, the other big piece of this is the Texas Rising Star assessors will no longer be managed by each workforce board. It will be managed at a centralized state level. It's going to be a new system, so there's going to be the bandwidth to get these programs into the Texas Rising Star on a statewide level. These are all projections, definitely could change. But basically what we're looking at is if we go into fiscal year 24, knowing that the money that we have, we should have around 70,000 that's left at the end of next fiscal year. And then that would get us to serve around 14,948 kids. at about 96% of target. If you turn it over to the back, there's another scenario where we pushed us out a little bit to say, okay, so what if we wanted to enroll more kids? Because, you know, our waiting list is going to go up. We get over 1,000 applications a month for families who need services. So what if we push the envelope a little bit? And so we did that. We said we wanted to end the year serving as close to 16,000 as we could. And this forecast shows that our year to date would end us at 15,943 children. We would end at 102% of estimated target, but that would leave us with an $8.8 million deficit. So one of the scenarios that could happen is if the board worked with Texas Workforce Commission, and if there's other workforce areas that is not spending all of their allocation, Dallas can take that. So, you know, it's just going to be a rough year. It's going to kind of be kind of, where do we go from here? What's the impact of all of the changes? But that's our forecast. That's the model that we came up with. Any questions? I know that was a lot for a morning, wasn't it?
But part of the reason why we're serving fewer kids in your forecasting is because of this increase in average unit rate, right?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, any questions, comments? It's a lot of information taken. I'm not sure that's.
It's good.
It is, thank you. And it is a lot of information and I had talked to Lori a little bit and we would love to, if we needed to do a deeper dive in a past meeting. There's just a lot of variables for it. And so we would be happy to do that.
It's very clear and concise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, that was easy, guys.
But I think as we continue to see this, it's important to say what this forecast is. You know, it's a big part of what we do about the budget. So that, okay, teacher grants, good. So then it's for the tenant piece, and then we'll come back and get our updates and this quality assurance. I know we're running a little bit behind. I think we started a bit late, but so appreciate everybody staying for these forward reports.
So last month, Nick was put on a TANF choices, snapshot, deep dive into TANF information, and thank you so much. And there were few board of directors that attended, and it was really, really good. I think I learned a lot too. It was a good refresher for me as well. We had a big sheet too, and I don't know, I think you may have gotten that sheet last month through an email that Lori sent that has some of the details in there. But what we came back with was a budget of TANF funding from our grant allocation and how it is divided between the board and Equus services. And so I think that's where we, and this was a handout, so I'm sorry if you don't have it right in front of you. It's a budget sheet that says TWC projected 2023-24 TANF funding. And I believe that if you have questions, we'll just kind of go from there, since you all have it and we have already reviewed it.
I do.
Yes.
So first, thank you all. Right. I love the way the information is on here. It's a lot more, we can understand it better. I love how it says what is tied up already. Thank you for this budget. For people who are not aware, TANF is temporary assistance for needy families, and this is this super poor. In order to be eligible of your child-only house, you can make about $64 a month. If you're a family of 4, 2 kids, 2 caretakers, about $268 is what you're allowed to make to participate in the program. So I was very concerned when I opened this because we're talking about between 140 to 150 people at any given time in the entire county who are on TANF. And I know we don't want people to be on TANF because that means that their income threshold is so low. When we look at the budget that you sent over, which was very, very clear, the services, the $4.8 million total EQUIS budget for the TANF part, we're seeing only 21% of that is going to services for families. We've got 1%, 52,000 for short-term training, 33,000 for supportive services, 1% for transportation, 11%, 500,000, 504 for subsidized employment, which is getting people an average wage of $15 an hour, 1% gift cards, and 340,000, 7% for a summer youth program. And then we have 3.7 million in operations. And that's what flagged my concern last time is this doesn't seem like the best way to truly reach this population, especially as broken down by percentage. And so that's where my concerns came from. This is I just 1% in some of these. I think we really should have these a lot higher.
If I could, one thing to clarify is that 100 some odd number, that's families that are on welfare, not people, right? Does it say people or families? Because I believe that's the total number of grants, TANF grants that are let. Is that correct?
I'm basing that on just I asked last time, maybe 2 meetings ago, total number, I don't know if it was people or families, but the number I was given was about 147.
And I do think it's families. That was just to clarify that. I think what we're missing here is that so much of this is not only service to customer, but it is also in terms of a regulatory requirement to keep track of the customer and make sure the customer is participating. Dee, I'll give it back to you, but I think that's where the intensive staff activity, it's as I mentioned earlier in RECE, so much is being required of us to police the customer. It's an enforcement conversation about, are you doing a good job search? Are you getting what you need? And there have been restrictions until recently on how much training we could provide to TANF customers. That was a very sadness for me, but it was a workforce strategy. That's how it was geared for at least the last 20 years since welfare reform. And so we were pushed to say, no, do not give them more than 3 months of training. Do not give them more than a couple of weeks exposure. It is different now, but not vastly different. And you're right, families can't exist on that money. But the rules about TANF, you cannot have a child to get on TANF after you are already on it. I was telling someone that last week because there are still so many misunderstandings in the community about welfare. TANF is paid to a family based on family size, as you mentioned, Rebecca. And once you're on it, you're allowed 5 years from the age of the youngest child. Any future births do not register for your grant. They'll count the kid, but you don't get more time. You have a 5-year clock from the time you start. And it's kind of it's not a good program, but it is a federal program. And the steps we do are required. Now, could we be more economical? Probably. But we do also pay, that's not just staffing, that's paying for the workforce centers as well. And so that's kind of, that cost is bigger than just personnel cost. Dee or Ashley, more, please. I'm not looking at the paper. I apologize. Can't do both things on my computer.
And I understand that the family allocation, that's not up to us. There are limits federally and at the state, but this is specifically outreach dollars. And it doesn't feel right to me that we're spending $3 million on essentially policing or staffing more to serve families. And 500,000 on $15 an hour jobs. And so I think we really need to look at this and figure out how we can use the models and what's working to serve more families, or to serve these families in a way that might be more helpful.
Happy to look at other options in the system. There are some better processes possibly. Remember, it's not, as I say, it's not just staffing. Counselors have to be here, that just like the RECE program, intensive counseling, connections with the customer consistently. They cannot miss meetings. They will lose their grant. It's very intensive, but I know that TechWS does a very good job of job development for those $15 an hour jobs. So we do a lot of work experience, but that takes staff to go out and develop the conversation with CVS to get the, the special jobs for people who really do not have great work skills. Many work their way straight out. And, we've had some great success stories. Happy to look at other systems throughout Texas, and not many states run this program through their workforce boards, very much like child care. We are an anomaly. Definitely have models in Florida to look at, and Colorado, and a few other states I think we can come up with. But the training issue is a Texas issue, or was for many years. It is open now, but Dee, how far can we go with training? We can't operate it like an adult program where we pay $17,000 to enroll somebody in 2 years of study, can we?
No, I think it is limited, and also it is $15, but we have to be careful on what we're leading them to, that they don't fall off the cliff and lose other benefits. It's a slippery slope with working with them to get them to self-sufficient, where they don't need additional services. So you can't get them to make too much that they lose housing. And without housing, it's really hard. And I know ECWA's work in between that. Also, the addition of outreaching those that are not required to participate. So you do a good job with that. And I know those numbers are much bigger than who we are actually targeting because of the assistance they're receiving on TANF. So I do agree we can look at some other things. That's why we also included the summer youth program, which we didn't get to do this past year. And we're needing approval to ask TWC for permission to do that this year going forward. And we can increase those numbers. Now that's working with the children of those families, getting them prepared, and maybe we can, break the cycle where they won't be on assistance. That is our goal, but it is other things we can do, and we're willing to look at those things. And we know it is a staff intensive program, and it requires a lot of hand holding with these individuals to get them to participate, and also so they won't lose their TANF benefit as well as other benefits that they're.
Family homelessness is outrageous in our area. I know Tarrant County is higher than Dallas, but still we're seeing family homelessness, whole family homelessness at a rate that's unacceptable in any community. And that would be a concern too. The cliffs are extreme. TANF, you almost have to go from, I made nothing and I'm working for, I'm getting this amount of money every month, but to support my family, I would have to have a degree and a career, a professional job to cover all the costs that I'm going to lose. And people turn down increases in this program once we get them placed. If they're still eligible for other benefits, they will say no to another $1 because they know that will put them over in 6 months, and they could lose their child care benefits as well.
So do we need to, this is something we need to vote on in terms of our plan for this year? Or is this something we need to,
Well, one thing we would like to do is get permission from TWC to implement the summer youth program for sure, using these TANF dollars. And we would have to get approval to go to PwC to ask them for permission to do it going forward. And we like to start that early because we want to plan and have a really robust summer program for this.
Right, so I think that seems like a definitely good plan, so, do we have a motion to move forward with that component of this, the strategy that we shared, the capacity to speak for money for that community program? Have a second.
I'll second.
Is there be, any corollary to that relative to Rebecca's comments?
Correct. We start with the summer and then we'll come back to that again, so that way.
I didn't know if that needed to be incorporated in the motion.
We can definitely look at other options.
I can say this, we can always, from the TWC perspective, we can always come back and ask for additional funding for that summer program in the event we decide to do that.
So this dollar amount does not have to be set.
It doesn't
We just
have to
want
be
permission
set.
to move forward.
You just want to move forward with this
with
program.
asking-
And also, there's also flexibility under TANF. If there's, because I did, after our last, the session that we did in June, I have other ideas that I need to send to Lori. So there are other programs that we can also look at that I need to send to you guys based on that. So we can always amend the dollar amount and the project at a later date based on the comments.
So we want to amend the motion to be summer youth programs, other opportunities to be more utilize available funds.
We could, but I have a question for you, Stephanie. The other programs, are they part of the 10% rule? So I know for the summer youth program, and then also we have a line under the top section, education outreach specialist team. I think those two together can't be more than 10% of the grants. Are these other, because this right now is budgeted at 10% for those two together.
So the education outreach specialist can now be funded also with WIOA funds.
Excellent.
So you can actually make up the difference with WIOA.
Stephanie, that's not an option. We are spending WIOA funding for adult customers at an unprecedented rate. That's why we're moving dislocated worker dollars. So going to look for that in WIOA money, not a good option. We were looking at better ways to max out TANF. So it's very specific to the TANF grant today.
But in the interest of time, so I want to make sure we get this, get a motion that's clear on the table. Rebecca, I know you brought up a lot of good points. Other than summer youth, what else do we want to make sure we have, we're providing direction to those team audits, exploring.
I think for the programs that just from a line item, they seem to be, just from looking at this, like programs, I'm concerned about operations to services percentage. That was my issue.
So we definitely can look at the percentage between operations and services and see where we can make those changes.
Let me ask you a question. How much money do the family have to make before they're kicked out of town?
It's like 400, if your family of four, $466. So like, that's it. And you're not eligible for this.
Until you make
And
it
so that's why
$466 for a family
yes,
and you're out?
you're out. And that's why I was very disturbed by a 79-21% split.
But the wages that they could make, Rebecca, would also get them kicked out of the program, which is what Dee was explaining. Hitting the cliffs would have their benefits curtailed, not just in TANF, but in housing and their food stamp amount and their Medicaid. It's ridiculous. It is all hinged. And it's like a house of cards.
It's the family of four with two kids, $268. The benefits $460.
but the money that they can make, we're not in the eligibility business for TANF. So we don't do the eligibility. So I don't know if Tara's there. Tara, do you have off top what kind of funding we're talking, what kind of money are we talking about for any size family that gets them pushed out of TANF?
Well, usually the rate of pay, like you said, for sub is around 15. If they get to like that $17, $20 an hour, they usually lose their benefits in the next rate.
It sounds like we've just got a lot of information here and a lot of things we need to move forward with. So we just stick with the motion right now about the discussion with respect to the youth program. It feels like we need to have more presentation on this, and I think Rebecca's point is well taken, that we want to optimize our dollars in this area as much as possible. So I think we have a motion on this. We have a motion from Harry, and we have a second. Thank you, Stephanie. I think we had a lot of discussions, so I'm just going to say, ask all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And
I'm not opposed. I just want to understand what the motion is.
okay, the motion is that we're directing staff to have a discussion with the Workforce Commission about funding a summer youth program for next year. We're not committing to dollars at this point, but to have that discussion. Is that I want to be clear on that. Sure. All right, so and good.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
All right, any sessions? Okay. Thank you.
And don't come back.
We will come back and have some further discussion around this. And we have two other items on the agenda that we oh, that's right. Let's read this out. All those in favor? Well, we did vote. Yes. We did vote. Yeah. We did. Clarify the motion. Okay. Oh, you have it recorded appropriately. I did command it. You're throwing me off my game here.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay. All right, coming back to Alex, an update on leases and technology. Thank you, Dimitri, on that presentation.
Thank you, Deb, for the introduction. I'll be quick. As far as leases go, not too much to speak of. We are still looking or searching for a new Garland Stimson. As far as technology, I was asked to provide a brief update on the cybersecurity assessment that we recently completed in London. This assessment was 46 measures conducted by AT&T in partner with PwC to audit our network and policies that we have in place. Both AT&T and TWC were very complimentary with the advancements we had accomplished. The assessment identifies scores for both states, all boards, or larger boards, and we scored higher than the average in both categories. I would like to thank everyone involved, especially AT&T and TWC, for conducting these assessments, as it helps to keep us focused on our technology objectives. Any questions? Thank you.
Also did want to thank you for your great work on the international center. I'm responsible for purchasing equipment, technology, etc.
Thank you, Beth. I appreciate it.
All right, let's close this out. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Becky Manette. I'd like to give a brief update on the program of fiscal monitoring. If you look at page 27 of the packet, fiscal reviews for the following EQUIS, Dallas College Wilkinson Center, and Childcare Group are ongoing. I do have two updates from this report since the packet's been published. The final report for Irving ISD ADL program is complete. with a recommendation in the area of cost allocation, specifically just ensuring that all the elements are included in the cost allocation plan. Also, the final report for Richardson ISD for the AEL program is complete with recommendations in that same area and in the area of employee timekeeping. Program review for Dallas College Youth is complete, and we're just pending the report from the monitor. And there are 2 new program reviews that are just beginning for the SNAP program and the Choices program with Atlas. Are there any questions?
Appreciate it. Okay, we're at the end of the agenda. I know we covered a lot of information to take. Most of you saying, for an Senate meeting. Do we have any other items that we need to discuss?
This could probably wait until the meeting's adjourned, but I would want your staff's perspective about all the media attention that Texas Workforce Commission has received over the last week around this wage, what they call it, wage theft. So I would love to hear their perspectives on that. And Lori and Connie and company and Ashley, maybe we could do this offline, but I'd love to hear your perspectives and how that impacts us, if at all.
Lori, Connie, hold off. Lori is here. Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that, Deb.
Lots of media attention in the last week regarding wage theft and the Texas Workforce Commission. Steph could also weigh in here as well. How does that impact us at the local level, if at all?
I don't think we are, we're not aware of an impact at the board level. I think there are employer concerns, and there are people that, there's a lot going on at the Texas Workforce Commission. I'm not sure, I know our security in Texas is better than most states. I'm not really sure what to make of all of that because it is, like you say, media. I'm not hearing it from the people who are involved, but I'll make a point of asking and getting more information.
Yeah, it'd be good, perhaps send it out in your weekly summary out this week. That'd be helpful. All right, anything else? Okay, well, thank you guys. Thanks for making sure that I didn't screw up my first opportunity to serve Cheryl. So have a great day, everybody. And we are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.